Today, we have a business owner with over 200 employees to let us know what's really going on in today's economy.
Trav, welcome, man.
Yeah. Hey,
Good
thank
having
you.
you, man.
That's fun.
I know. So you work with the biggest employer in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon.
Yeah, we're a vendor to Amazon.
Yeah, you
Yep.
are.
Yeah.
As there are thousands of you guys, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're one of the largest.
Yep.
So what's interesting is you were telling me how you're flying to Amazon, and they're cutting edge on everything, right? Amazon is, you got to really watch them as a company, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely moving the needle, right? And just with the amount of people that they're employing, but also too, what's always going to hit the headlines as well is anytime a company's laying anybody off, Amazon's going to be in the news.
Yeah.
Just because they are the largest. I mean, you have so many other smaller businesses that are laying people off and it never makes the news. But anytime Amazon has any sort of layoffs, no matter what that number is, they're going to have a spotlight on them.
Well, and the thing is what people don't realize is they hire a lot of people before the holidays, and then they let a lot of people off after, and those always make headlines. But what's really going on aside from those two nuances?
Yeah, it's, there's a lot of AI, they use it. It's kind of fun, like some projects that, obviously just proprietary information. I can't describe exactly like what they're using it for because I respect our contract there. But I can say it's actually the way that they invest in the technology is unbelievable. And I think when we first met, when we were actually getting our Rivian vans, right? And it's whatever anybody thinks about electric vehicles, it's nice that a company like Amazon is actually doing research and design, which obviously they're getting a tax credit for doing R&D. Let's be real, from that standpoint. And it's the same thing in technology. So even like our delivery apps that we use, I mean, when they started out, they were just delivering on spreadsheets, and now the app knows exactly, we can track where the driver is. We can track the safety of the drivers. We know real time when it's being, the pictures being taken, and it actually goes to the customer. So their vision that they're always looking for is how can we get a better quality product to the customer? And hence, when you get a package that's delivered, you get a picture taken right away, and it gets, sent to you where that package is in the delivery. And all that investment that they do, they're always customer forward on how they can get better service. And that's going to relay into AI and technology and everything. It's even like one-click purchases, right? Or even advertising on, now you can see there's a Black Friday football game, okay? There's no ads. And so you can sit there and watch it on your iPad, and things that are for sale on the side of the right for commercial, it'll actually get to the point where you can actually click on that shirt and it'll add it into your Amazon account for purchasing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I know, first of all, I do really want to get down this road here on the tech side, but the reason we wanted you on today is because in that other conversation we were having, you were telling me that you've hired thousands of people.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing a different kind of a person apply.
Yes.
And so one of the reasons we wanted you on here today is to talk about that, because you're seeing these are delivery drivers, not that that's a bad thing.
Yep.
But you're seeing now a college-educated, white-collar individual applying for these delivery positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'll relate this to real estate investors that are, if they're listening on the real estate side, right? You have a Class A apartment, and if you can't afford the Class A apartment, you get pushed to a Class B, then you get pushed to a Class C. But this isn't stating that the employees are, can't afford to be there or anything. It's just kind of to give that mental picture of a ladder system, like ABC type properties, where you have a lot of middle management jobs that have been eliminated, but they can't go anywhere else to find jobs, right? So they're looking anything for, obviously, money to, keep their bills paid. So they're looking for any sort of work. And the telltale, like we were sharing, is when we first started in 2020, normally people were applying with us, never had a resume, right? Now, and I don't know if AI has to do a little bit with this, of creating things, but now we're seeing a lot of resumes that are coming through when people are actually applying for driver positions, but they're college educated and they just got eliminated job from something that AI or some sort of efficiencies actually took out that position, and they're looking for work to pay their bills, right? So, and we're just seeing an uptick in applicants.
Yeah,
with
and that was the
with
other
that
piece. You,
background.
you know, it's interesting. I was talking to Tarl the other day, a good friend of ours, for our Limitless partner, and he had a position he put out. He had 1,100 applications.
Yeah.
So that's a lot for a position he said was about a $75,000 a year position. And now, of course, you know, he had to weed through all those, which he used AI for, by the way. But so are you also seeing a lot more people apply?
Here's a good way. So back in 2020, when it was hard to hire, and we had, you know, it's kind of funny to see how it unfolds. And you said something to me back in 2020 when I was having, you and George Gammon actually told me this, was we were spending a lot of money on Indeed, right? I mean, a lot of money trying to push your ads up, trying to do and everybody else was hiring in that situation. Now we actually don't spend a lot of money on Indeed trying to hire. We still use Indeed. It's still a pretty big source of applicants for us in our positions, but we don't have to drive that money to try to drive us to the top. When we put in an ad, we're just getting that many more applicants. And those are just kind of like those two. I'm pretty grassroots. I don't overthink things. If I kind of look at things maybe just a little bit from a street level, a common sense level, instead of trying to overanalyze it. If I'm not spending a lot of marketing dollars to find the applicants, and I'm seeing a lot of college educated people and also with resumes that are coming, you know, it's telling me that something different is being pushed elsewhere, not to say above us, but just in a different, more type of office setting.
And now a word from my paid sponsor, PadSplit. Look, if you've been trying to make single-family rentals pencil out in this market, you already know that the math can be tight. With high rates, properties that would have cash flowed 5 years ago now often break even at best. So what do? You wait on the sidelines and miss out, or maybe you find a better model? That's why I want to talk about today's sponsor, PadSplit. Here's an example of the math in some markets. A 4-bedroom renting for $2,700 as a traditional rental may be able to gross over $6,000 a month in a co-living setup through PadSplit, depending on location, occupancy, and costs. The same house can potentially more than double the gross revenue in the right market. And before you think, that sounds like a headache, PadSplit helps with member screening and rent collection while still allowing you to operate the property and make management decisions. This is one strategy investors use to try to make deals work when traditional rentals don't pencil. If you want to see the numbers for yourself, go to padsplit.com/hosts. I'll have a link in the description. Just run the math on the property you already own and see if it's a fit. You might be surprised.
And how much are these positions paying that you're getting all these applications for?
Yeah. On average, they're $20.50 an hour to, you know, $22 an hour. Because we have a location in Milwaukee that pays a little bit more, but the drivers there too are DOT certified. So they get a little bit extra bump just because obviously they have a higher certification as a driver.
So that's about what, 40, 45 grand a year?
Yep. So if you had a $20 hour employee, basically you double it. A little bit more than that is kind of where your salary if you're working 40 hours a week.
And is the volume of applicants much higher than it was?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much higher? Like, what are the numbers?
Oh God. Like when we turn on the hiring bucket, right? It's, I mean, I got to say we're seeing 20% more candidates.
Oh, wow. And that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, because that's a big number for you. That's thousands of people.
Yeah. And, you know, in nationwide, there's a little bit of turnover, like in our positions, you know, from that standpoint. And, but obviously this, you know, when we're looking for work of that nature, I mean, it's just, it's pretty mind boggling to see. It's pretty fascinating, actually, when you look at it from just a different lens. It's kind of like, wow, we're getting a lot more applications for what isn't common for us.
When we all think about this, I mean, that's going to affect how much people can afford for their housing payments, whether that be their mortgage or their rent or having to double up on rent, because, you know, a lot of these people in middle management are probably making 60, 80 or 100 grand. So to then go back to $40,000, that's a huge hit.
Yeah. And look at it this way. So our Madison market, because we have a location in Madison and we have a location in Milwaukee. Okay. Let's just take the Madison numbers. The median home price there is about $400,000, right? And to afford that mortgage, you're going to be making what, 90, 70 to 90, probably in that area after you figure taxes, principal, interest, everything else from there. So like when we get into our drivers, it's what can they afford for a starter home? Can they even find a starter home? Right. So what ends up happening, like for my wife and I, as real estate investors, we actually have, housing for our employees. So let's say we have an 18 unit, that's, 2-bedroom, 1-bath in that nature. So we can actually help offset some of that cost just in our rent, right, of a place to live, good quality place. We get a good tenant. We're still cash flowing and we're taking advantage of the tax situation. And we don't have a lot of turnover, vacancy. So the nucleus works out really well.
Full disclosure, you've been investing in real estate a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you started with the Amazon, you started you buying these places a while back, right?
Yep.
And you're just accumulating more.
Yeah, and we have apartment units, buildings,
yeah.
And then we have single family homes as well, right? So we were able to, like one of our managers, he's a single dad. He's great. He's been with us since day one, and we found him a place in a great school district around Madison. He's been living in that place. He takes care of it. I keep on saying to him, I'm like, when are you going to buy the place? You know what I mean? I'll sell, and he's like, yeah, I'll get there sometime, but it just works out great. So even in our portfolio, we do have apartment buildings. Then we have a, handful, a little bit more of single family homes that we rent in that same manner with our employees.
So do you think though, because, there's such a push from AI right now on the white collar workforce, that this trend is going to continue for you to keep getting high quality?
And are you seeing it across the country? Because let's
Yeah.
also mention that you're part of a committee that Amazon put together of that represents all the DSPs or delivery service providers around the country, right? So what are you seeing across the country?
Yeah, and absolutely same aspect. When you get to the South, I mean, it's even easier to hire, right? Versus us in the Midwest. When you think about Madison, it's University of Wisconsin. There's not a lot of, it's a different workforce, right? I mean, there's more office type employees, and I could be seeing this a lot more just because of my demographics being more university type, college per se, versus maybe down here in Phoenix. The labor market could be a little bit different from that standpoint. But the hiring, I know here, because Skylar's down here in Phoenix, and Skylar, obviously, too.
Of course.
And it's the same hiring for him. So Skylar also runs overnight, let's say, packages that are bulk, big DOT trucks, CDL drivers, and they're going from warehouse to warehouse or from the post office to the warehouse overnight. So that way, when his other crew comes in, they're doing their last mile delivery. And it's the same thing that he's seeing too. He's seeing some more better candidates that are coming through, the resumes, just having that conversation with them, and then just talking around people around the country. It's more in the Midwest, I would say it, then it's a little bit easier to hire, down south here, but just the uptick of, more resumes and stuff. Definitely the people in the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Minnesota are seeing that.
So, there's going to be obviously a resistance for the white collar worker to then go take a blue collar job. Like it just isn't, it's like these two lanes, right? We always had white collar and blue collar, and very rarely would a blue collar take a white collar job and vice versa. And are you seeing a resistance with people or are they talking to you about it after they already have the job, that they never saw themselves doing this?
You know what? Just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
They actually come in as a professional. Everybody always says it's day one. Obviously you start dating somebody, they're going to be on their best behavior. We always talk about this. They're always, full uniform. Things look good, more professional. It's interesting to see versus someone that's first entry level job. Maybe, actually I take that back. Entry level job, people are excited. They're working their first job, but you can also tell when someone's not going to make it. You know what I mean? They may show up right on time versus, early and prepared. So actually you see them actually show up even more prepared and more buttoned up.
That's not surprising to me. Let me ask, do you think this is like a canary in the coal mine issue?
100%.
Where this is probably going on. I mean, if it's going on at Amazon at the delivery at the delivery level, it has to be going on all over, right?
And you look at it, it's the number of people that are hired to be delivery drivers. Okay. When you look at a little over 2,000 vendors like myself that have a contract with Amazon and then start doing the math about how many drivers are there. I mean, you can fact check me out there. I'm not 100%, but I'm 99% sure that our logistics system as a whole is the largest in the world. And, it's not a decade old, which is kind of crazy to think about that, about the magnitude of delivering that. And obviously, too, this is public information. It's in the papers that Amazon renewed a contract with the Postal Service. And there was a time there is Amazon going to be able to come to a deal with the post office? And then how do you service them farms that are out in the middle of nowhere to get an Amazon package? Because they truly are obsessed with the customer, right? And they'll put the infrastructure into it to be able to deliver last mile packages to everybody.
So you don't need a college degree for these jobs, right?
Yep.
So do you think this is going to impact college? Because Ken and I talk all the time about, is college going away for the average American? Because, you have these white collar middle management people that are going to pay a bunch of money to go to college. But then if there's no jobs for them, then are they going to still get that degree?
And it's what? It's, back in the 80s, if you look at it, what's inflation's up? What is it? 100%, whatever, if you look at the dollar.
Yeah.
And mind you, don't run my stats as gold, but I think the college education is up 1,200% in cost.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you do kind of paint that back, you look back at debt and, government backing student loans. I mean, you can look at it any way that you want to. Right.
I was thinking of that, Danielle, is a really good question.
Just the cost.
But also the other issue is this isn't always the case, but I think that people that have a college degree believe that they're more valuable than people don't have one.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always the case, as you know, from an employment standpoint, right? Because for us, there's so many other factors, but that is a factor. So as we start to see more people coming out of, let's call it middle management, white collar, it's going to be pushing on the, call it the non-degree, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna create more.
Here's how I look at this. So, and I agree with you. So it's fun for me because I'm 49. So all my friends' kids now are going to college. And now I'm asking them the question, are you going to push your kids to college?
What do they say?
But, my friends are still in that, raised by baby boomers, let's call it, right? And they're still in that mindset. You still have to go to college.
Yeah.
As parents. And then it's like, I think it's the same idea as what you're thinking of, am I worth less because I didn't go to college? And I think there's still, but I think that's starting to go down,
Well,
that stigma.
Let's take a look at this. I mean, let's, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's probably $200,000 to go to college. Wouldn't you say? I mean, that's
It's
right.
in the hundreds for sure.
Well, it's got to be pretty close to that, 40, 50 a year. Is that high these days?
I'd say 35. I mean,
35.
Yeah.
Okay, so 35. Let's call it 150 then, right? So that I would think maybe not the kid, but the parent or somebody who's funding that has to be thinking, because to your point, Danielle, you said it, like if you're going to be driving for Amazon in the low 20s, what's the point of spending $150,000?
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, I think that the generation, like our generation, everybody went to college. We had to go to college. But now our kids, a lot of us were successful at going to college and we got a good job and we did that trajectory, where people younger than us did not have that same trajectory necessarily. So I think the kids that are now being born, it depends on how the parents are doing. I can almost guarantee you, if you have a parent that went to college, has debt, and is still paying it off, they're not thrilled about doing the same thing to their child.
It is fun to watch, just what the parents are doing. because I'm a little bit different. I'm the one that's saying, does he really need to go to college or does she really need to go to college? And then, if I'm around the kid, right?
around Kiyosaki too long.
Yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? I always kind of get the look, because I always challenge them, right? And it's like, what are you going to go to school for? Are you going to play sports? There is an aspect, though, of getting out of the house and learning what it is to be a young adult, right?
Yeah, but that's an expensive price to pay. 100 and something.
I would argue to say that's what college is really kind of for.
Right.
It's kind of a way to. I mean, maybe not for you because you were an A student.
Well, no, but
you're talking to.
I think so.
To D student.
But I trust me, I know.
But-
But I still think $100 and some $1,000 to learn that lesson. I mean, people are paying that off for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's the thing. We're meeting people, friends, that have well over that number in debt, right?
Yeah.
And it's precluding them from buying a home because they're sitting on this, 100, 200, 300. We've even heard as high as $400,000 in student debt. I mean, I was talking to Robert Kiyosaki the other day, and he actually was telling me the story about it. He got dropped off by an Uber driver,
right?
And it was a woman, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" She's like, "I'm going back and getting another master's," right?
Yeah.
So she spent more money, and so you wonder. They start stacking these degrees. So is this reality? Is this a time where reality for true education gets blasted apart once and for all?
Yeah, no. And like I said, I think the parents are still kind of hanging on to that a little bit. Even for myself, I don't know if you're the same, because I know that you wrestled in college and I played football in college. I went strictly to play football.
Me too. I went to wrestle.
And and I sat in the front right away because
I sat in the back. I don't know.
I sat in the
How
front.
is that up there?
Yeah, because the girls sat up there.
Oh, you're smarter. I was in the back because that's where the door is.
Sorry. But anyways, it's, put yourself into a spot where you can be successful, right?
Yeah.
So, but otherwise I would have went to the military. I like the camaraderie, of working with the group. And it's, a lot of people ask like how many employees you have. And, some people say, oh my God, that sounds like a headache. I love the camaraderie. I love building leaders. You know what I mean? And that's one thing coming out of schools too, where we get a lot of our, we got some military people, police, that work with us, small business owners. But it's fun to watch them actually become a leader. And they're afraid to make a mistake at first. And I'm like, just make a decision. Or, I don't answer my phone. Our ops manager, Corey, tells this to all new employees all the time. I'm going to call Travis. And he goes, he won't answer. I mean, he's available, but he's going to want you to solve your problem first.
Of course.
And seeing that leadership.
And that is that's the part of owning a business that I like.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to say, though, I mean, that's a good point. We could see more people go into the military. Like, because you always think, like, what if white collar jobs aren't available, where do people actually go? Because there's only so many plumbers and HVAC, and there's only so many of those. And you bring up a good point with the military, because the other piece of the puzzle that you're not, that you have to think about is that if the parent had a job where they were making 90 or 100,000, and now they're working at a job that's more blue collar and they're making 40, 50,000, they're also not in a financial position to necessarily help either. And so they're, when their kid turns 18 and they are debating taking on that debt, I mean, you can't say that the current economy is not going to affect whether or not that parent is going to want to co-sign on those loans.
Yeah. And I think this is where you see multi-generational living under one roof. And, we were lucky we were in Italy and France.
Yeah.
I was in France, Italy, and Switzerland, right? And we were in Italy together.
Yeah.
And how many of those families that are overseas are
A lot.
and they're living together.
Yeah.
And it's right in front of our eyes to see how the rest of civilizations that are older than the U.S. were coming up on 250 years.
Correct.
So and to answer your question, Daniil, I think that's how they do it is you end up grandparents move back in with you, or you move in with the grandparents.
By the way,
their home.
that's what most of Hawaii is.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's interesting, right? Because it's an island.
Yeah.
As everyone knows, but there's only so much commerce, so many jobs. Home prices are high. You can only build so much so fast, and so you have affordability issues, all this stuff there. So it's this little interesting its own economy.
And that's interesting you bring up Hawaii. I didn't mean to cut you off, Danielle. I apologize. So Hawaii just opened up Amazon last mile delivery. So it's been literally about 2 years, I think, that they've actually been delivering there. And it was funny because I was interested to be like, oh man, I don't think you can get anybody to hire. I think they're always going to go to the beach. You know what I mean? They're just going to like, hey, I'm going to be out, driving, lead the shift, go hit the surf, just kind of that stigma mentality. And my friend Will and Sheena, both of them, they're running businesses there, and they both actually operate a business in Colorado. So they can actually take a direct flight from Denver right into Honolulu, and they can manage both different sites very easily. And Will was actually born in Hawaii, and they hired like crazy. There were so many people that were actually looking for work.
I'm not surprised.
And they run a very good operation there.
Yeah. It's just interesting to watch, and I think you're. I'm not surprised at all. You find a very good employee there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's expensive. There's not a lot of jobs, and there's multiple people living generationally in the homes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, even though, I just had a 4-bed, 2-bath that I just purchased and tried to rent, and I had 5 people come through, and 2 of the people came through with their mothers. So it was a daughter, kids, and a mom. So right there is generational living, even if it's from a tenant perspective.
We've been seeing that a little bit more on the other side too. We're also seeing parents buying their kid a house with they call it the boomers.
Yeah.
And to your point, Danielle, whether they're moving in or not moving in, so things are changing.
Yeah, they're definitely changing. But, so Travis, you're pretty big on this workforce housing. Now, do you see people in the workforce buying homes like you used to, or do you think it's more of a lifelong renter situation?
I don't see them buying homes. And I think it was a philosophy at the beginning where a lot of people wanted to rent. They just wanted to move around. COVID hit, work from home. But now I think that generation wants to buy a home, and now they can't, right? Just because they don't qualify for it. If liquidity is drying up, if it's not, I'm not really, savvy on home lending to, 30-year fixed, type, just normal W-2 type home buying, right? But they can't afford it.
Well, you think we're moving to a renter nation?
100%.
Yeah. It is interesting because it does appear that white collar middle management is under attack, and they're having to take, because these aren't a white collar sitting at home making a career decision to go to blue collar. These are survival.
And I have some of my employees, they have kids and they're trying to plan this out. They're all younger ones, right? And they're like, how do I get into a home?
Yeah.
And I'm proud that they have that mindset. Like it is a good step. You talk about this all the time. It's a stepping stone where people should be able to afford to get into, buy a home, have their families, raise their families there, of course. But it's even as an employer, you look at it and you're like, how can I strategize as a real estate investor and try to help position some of our employees into it?
I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think people, though, think that people spend more money than people used to back in the day. So they look at it as they're wasting money, and that's why they can't afford a home. Like, how do you feel about that sentiment?
Oh, just like throwing it away?
Yeah, like Starbucks and Netflix.
It might be true in some respects, but I don't know that I've seen a big difference. I think the issue is that the cost of living has risen so fast as compared
and the interesting
to
one
wage growth
is me being at 49. So I watch a lot of people go through a divorce, and then how do you split up that house with all that equity in it that had a low interest rate? And then you start seeing, and then both of them are on a loan, and then you can't get them off the loan, right? So then you start seeing all this strategizing, and then we get a lot of that where people are just looking for that extra income, trying, they may pick up a weekend job and trying to, deliver packages, and they may still have a full-time job, but work with us part-time just to try to help offset some of that living cost, because obviously their costs of living just went to 2 locations versus both them income used to be able to support a low interest home loan that hardly has any debt on it. Now you have all that trapped equity in there, and you can't do anything because you have 2 people on the loan.
So, really good point. I wanted to kind of switch gears just a little bit and talk about, you're seeing massive tech changes that Amazon's rolling out, that's also causing less jobs at Amazon, right? So we're talking about who you're hiring, but what are you seeing, moving up the line?
I would say Amazon is actually still hiring, but they may not be hiring that middle management position.
Okay.
And here's an example, is right by our delivery station, Amazon's building one of the largest fulfillment centers there. And I mean, it's on 150 acres. I mean, it's 5 stories, 6 stories tall. I mean, it's a massive, massive fulfillment center. It's going to be heavy robotics, okay, that are going to be in there. But still, I would guess about 2,000 people will still work there, right? So as you see, they're laying off 30,000 people in its middle management positions. But as they're building more and more and more of these fulfillment centers, because mind you, they're on a strive to service that customer. So our delivery windows, you order something, have it delivered within an hour isn't out of the question of the future, right? So as they strategically are putting more of these larger fulfillment centers around the country, they're still staffing them. But that's the latter approach that I'm looking at. Is that job paying as much as a middle management job used to pay, working in Seattle or working in Nashville?
And is there a plan to reduce that 1,000, 2,000 to 1,000?
Just with the robotics, 100%.
In the fulfillment center itself.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe that's stage one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why I was looking. And then you've got, I don't know how far away you are from driverless, but, we've got Waymos all over the place here in Phoenix. I know they've talked about it. I know you've talked about drone delivery.
Yeah.
So all replacing people, right?
Yeah.
So
robots.
Let's go. We'll talk a little bit about that.
And it's coming. And it'll come. It's, can you picture a robot doing plumbing on a job site?
I can't, but I'm old.
You know what I mean?
But
so, and I don't know exactly how it's going to fold out. This is just my mindset, right? Because, Amazon has cool robots that they're showing out there, robot delivery. Tesla, gosh, they shut down a whole car line just so they can build, obviously, robots. You know what I mean? There was on the Sean Ryan show, they actually had a human robot that he was walking around. You could push them over and they would stumble and stand on their feet. You could tell it to jog, and you just jog right next to almost like a human robot. Like if you find it on YouTube there, it's pretty cool. But I would say if you can think of our Rivian vans, which are designed well, there's a jump seat and a right seat. I would say the first step that you'll start seeing of delivery of that, you'll have a driver still driving the vehicle, even though self-driving will come around like Waymo, all that technology will grow. In the right seat will be a robot. I'm going to call it the driver's helper. While the driver's delivering on one side of the street, the robot will just be delivering on the right side of the street just to speed up that route, speed up that customer demand, and speed up getting packages delivered faster, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And then what about drone delivery? Because we keep hearing about it. I keep looking up. I don't see anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So there is some that are, and again, this is public. There's stuff that's being tested actually in Texas, right? Where they'd put a QR code near the driveway or something, and the drone would fly over, hit the QR code, and everything is always data points, right? Where's the front door? Where's the camera system to see that front door, and where can you drop the package? So when you hover over, and obviously if you scan that QR code, you're at the right house for delivery. First of all, just because you're matching up nomenclatures is all you're doing, but an issue that they run into is homeowners associations don't want the codes being approved.
Oh, the HOA gets in.
I knew you'd appreciate this one here, Didio. And but not obviously it doesn't meet the HOA, so you can't actually have drone delivery.
Karen
in the
can't have a
neighborhood.
QR code in the front yard.
But but it's cool though. I mean, it's there's a lot of cool things that going on. Can you charge drones on on street lights, so they can keep running 24/7. There's a lot of neat ideas that can come around.
What else, without, crossing the line, but what else are you seeing Amazon? What are we going to see in the next couple of years?
Yeah. Internally, there's a lot of cool AI that's going on, right? Where you can problem solve and design, different operations, let's just say, of whatever problem we're having running our delivery service partner. Let's just say, how do I manage this fleet better? and, you know, I can put into tools and, you know, but we can collaborate a lot faster. So here's an example. If Skylar's down here and I'm up here and Will's in Hawaii, you know, we've got, you know, same type of operations going on, but what can we funnel into AI and then cross collaborate with each other of problems that you're having and get better fleet maintenance? You know, when do you think that battery will go dead just by our service records, or, you know, how long do our tires last on average? So then you actually can detail that out and collaborate, even though they're a little bit different environments, but we're still operating with the same type of vehicles.
Connecting the country with the same issues.
Connecting the country with the same issues.
Wow.
And then you start using all those data points, and it'll actually just drive more efficiencies on how much it's costing us with our fleet.
Yeah,
So-
I've seen, you know, things with Amazon go away, like the customer service piece, right? It's all completely AI now,
Yeah.
right? All completely automated. I mean, they've got it to where it's pretty brilliant that there's really, I mean, have you ever spoken to a person at Amazon?
Babe, you always say that, and I always tell you yes every time
I
I
know.
call.
I
I
always
end up
like-
getting transferred to a person if I need anything
haven't.
specific.
Yeah. Well, you think about this too. Have you ever seen that in India? Like, let's say someone that's very good with AI, let's just say, and they cold call a company in the US. You know, they'll say, if I can shadow your people and figure out AI, and you don't pay me until I replace 7 people with AI.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that you that said that maybe?
No,
Yeah.
but I have heard about it.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting where you say that you don't get paid, and, you know, I won't get paid unless I save you and replace people. But they, you know, they start mirroring people and like looking at their operations internally,
Yeah.
and
What they're doing on a keyboard and everything.
and without the employee even knowing that they're being monitored from that standpoint of just workforce efficiency.
Yeah.
And then they get paid if they actually make the company have less labor, payroll, right? But increase in revenue and controlling their expenses, just like we do in real estate, right? You got to control the expenses somehow.
100%.
And how do you maximize and push the needle on the revenue? I mean, Amazon does the same thing. It's you know, you know, sometimes you hear the big bad wolf like that, but look how many jobs, like you just said, they're the number one employer in the world. How many jobs that they actually created with an idea?
Oh, a lot. I mean,
You know.
yeah, I applaud. I mean, what they've done is incredible.
Yeah.
I just think it's really, really fun to watch
Yeah.
because they're always going to be on the leading edge.
All right. Thanks for being on Travis. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.